Hello, everyone, and welcome to the June 2021 edition of Autocall Academy. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. My name is Peter Ryan. I'm with the marketing team, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's event. And I know I say this probably every month, but I think once again, we've got a really good agenda for you today with some excellent information. Of course, we're in Teams, which you can tell because you're already here. And we're all going to be muted in this, and you're going to be able to ask your questions through the Q&A window. So if you do have something that you want to ask at any time during the session, go ahead and press that question mark bubble up in the right-hand side of your interface, and that'll be sent to the moderators, and we'll go ahead and look at those. And we will have time for Q&A at the end of the session. As always, the session is being recorded, and what we will do is post the recording on the Autocall partner section of the website, so that if you want to go back and refer to it later on, or if you have colleagues that haven't had a chance to join today due to schedule conflicts, it'll be available to listen to. So with that, a quick run of the agenda. We'll start out with just a very short update on the touchscreen display and some of the collateral and activities from a marketing side that we've done over the past few weeks since the launch. And then we're going to pass it over to Paul Nelson for a pretty lengthy session on the new 602 version of the TSW and the BSIU. This is a really exciting set of products that I know that we talked about during the partner conference. And this is a chance to really get into some more depth about it as the launch of this is impending. Then Chuck is going to take us through some new additions to the P2P and FQQ tools, which make it easier for you to design and quote systems. And then Lori is joining us to talk about a really neat new session from the field sales engineers rather, called Fire Talk, which I think you'll find to be a fantastic tool. Brian will give us a training update to let us know what's new in the world of training. And then I just want to say a quick couple words about our podcast series and the new episodes coming up for that. So with that being said, we'll switch to the next slide here, and I will talk quickly about the launch updates. As you know, we launched the touchscreen display a few weeks ago, and all the materials are out on the website. And the website's been updated to reflect new imagery and new capabilities for the TSD. We have issued a press release via a company called Godfrey, which is our PR firm, and Aaron has put together a social media toolkit files, a zip file, and put that on the website as well. So we had talked about that on earlier sessions, and those are definitely available. We've also begun featuring TSD in our social media postings on LinkedIn and Twitter, and also our banner advertising and social media productions that have been happening. The new control unit brochure has been released. The French-Canadian translation of that is in process. That's with our Logos firm, who is our translator, and we should be getting that done, next couple of weeks probably. It shouldn't take very long at all. We're also in the process. We've got a contractor that's going to be going through the French website and truing up all the content and making changes to the French web pages as well. So we'll see a refresh on that again over the coming weeks. That'll be running changes, and then we'll have her on tap to keep us up to date much more frequently than what we have been doing in the past. I know we talked about the Autocall digital campaign during earlier sessions. That continues to run and to generate contacts, which we're processing through Salesforce. And the Autocall product catalog is something that was a big topic of conversation during the partner conference. We're on our third draft of the catalog now with production. And of course, it features the TSD, the TSW 602, and the BSIU that you'll hear about today. Basically, as soon as we're able to get everything fixed and the new designs put out and get them, get all the corrections made, you'll see it. So I'm thinking that it's going to be later this month, early July, that you'll have it. It's just, we're just going to work through it. So that's where we are with it. As soon as we finish that, we'll be putting it into French translation for the Canadian team. And that should be a pretty quick process after that to get it turned into French. So stick with us. I know you've been very patient. It's just a huge project. And, we're making good progress on it, though. It's definitely moving along. So with that being said, again, a quick update. We're going to pass this over to Paul Nelson, and he can talk to you about some exciting new product launches.
All right. Thank you, Peter, for that introduction. So we're happy to introduce the TrueSight Workstation version 6.02. And as you'll see moving forward, we're making major releases of the TrueSight Workstation software and annual event. So we're excited to show you what's new for this year. So as we move to the next slide, we'll give an overview. So what you'll see is this year we've really focused on making the TSW software look better, operate better, and we've expanded the compatibility as well. So you'll see that the graphics now are three-dimensional, or they have an appearance of 3 dimensions. We still support our old style of graphics, but you'll find that the 3D graphics are much more visually appealing. And we've made editing those graphics even easier. We've expanded on our DACR compatibility, and we'll really go into depth on what the DACR compatibility or what that feature can do for you. We've also made the handling of client connections smarter. We'll talk about that in just a moment. And for those who do not have English as their primary language, we've expanded support for Spanish, Portuguese, and Arabic languages in runtime now. And then we're going to focus quite a bit on the BSIU, what that is and where that can be used, and what the advantages are of the Building Systems Information Unit. So let's move to the next slide. Okay, let's get into these 3D graphics. So you see the sample on the screen. This looks much, much nicer than the two-dimensional graphics that we've been using for years. And with this three-dimensional style of graphics, it makes operators understand the floor plan and navigate through floor plans faster, and really gives a nicer looking product to our customers. You can also customize the view. You can turn layers on and off. At the moment, you cannot do that during runtime, but just a sneak peek toward next year, we're going to release the capability to do that actually during runtime, so that you can turn information layers on and off based on what you want to see. So for example, if you have addressable notification, in a maintenance view, you may want to see all of your devices, including the notification appliances. But when you're in emergency reaction mode, well, you may want to see only initiating devices in that view, just to clear things up. We've given the technicians some new editing tools, and as silly as it may sound, probably the most important and popular of these editing tools is an undo button. Technicians have been asking for that for years, and we finally have the undo option. So a simple mistake in programming the TSW will no longer cost you hours of programming time. We've also enhanced some of the compatibility for the graphic backgrounds, and maybe more importantly, we've also set up part numbers for you to be able to engage with our factory for support in developing these 3D graphics. If you supply your applications engineers with two-dimensional files, they can convert those to the 3D style of graphics for you. So let's move to the next slide. All right, let's talk about the DACR, or the Digital Alarm Communicator Receiver compatibility. This is probably one of the most underused features available on TSW. So as some of you may know, part of the product that I manage are our integrations to other systems. And I'm often asked, how can I integrate a Siemens or a Notifier panel or a Bosch panel or whatever other manufacturer's panel a campus may have? And the simple answer is, it can be done very easily through this Digital Alarm Communicator Receiver compatibility. So as you see, we've expanded the models that we're compatible with. You see pictured here the SureGuard System 5 receiver and the AES Intellinet receiver. Essentially, what can be done with these is you can use the DACT, or the Digital Alarm Communicator transmitter, in any fire alarm control unit to communicate to this receiver. And when it's integrated into the TSW, all of those points of data that receiver is taking in are made available on the TSW. So if you have a building on a campus that has a competitor system in it, and you want to bring all those points of data into the TSW, include them on floor plan graphics, and make them operate just as if they were part of the system, you can do that. Of course, you can't exercise control on those points because it's a one-way communication, but you can have all the visibility into what's going on in that system. So I won't read for you what systems we're compatible with. You can see that on the screen, but we will continue to update compatibility here as new receivers come out. And just as a point of note, that AES Intellinet receiver, that presents some really neat options for campuses that don't have wiring between buildings, because now you can use the radio transmitters that AES offers. So let's take a look at the next slide. Okay, fault tolerance on remote clients. So we've really made the remote clients smarter. In cases where you have, let's say, a primary and a secondary TSW in very critical operations, we've made it possible to switch between the primary and secondary TSW servers without creating a fault. So previously, that would always result in a nuisance trouble condition. And whenever a rebuild needs to occur on a remote client, we've also made it smarter in the way it reconnects. It'll reconnect to the same slot without causing, again, a nuisance trouble. So just these small refinements and improvements really make the operator or the end customer's experience better. Next slide. So let's talk about software maintenance agreements, because at the outset, we talked about the fact that there's a new release of TSW planned at least once a year. And we're going to have more exciting features like these. So how does a customer stay up to date with their software? Well, previously it was a fairly large investment. They would have to buy the feature upgrade PID. So the A190 5065. And it was a pretty big investment. So incrementally each year, the new features may not have been worth it. Well, what happens if a customer does not update their software? As we all know with computers, it can introduce security risks, cybersecurity risks. Windows may undergo some changes and the compatibility may suffer. So we want to encourage customers to stay up to date, updating every year or even more frequently than that if there are changes. So we've introduced the software maintenance agreement. What that does is it provides access to the latest revision of software as part of a subscription. Every TSW comes with the first year of this coverage free of charge. So for instance, if you were to buy a TSW today, and within a year, we release a new version of TSW, you can download that version, take advantage of all those nice new features without having to pay anything additional. We're also going to, later on this year, introduce the method to offer this as a continuing subscription. So look for news of that in the next few months, but that will be a recurring revenue opportunity for all of us, and will be an opportunity for the customer to stay up to date with their software. Next slide. So what are some of the things, the values that we're delivering with this year's changes? Well, as far as selling the TSW is concerned, we have a much nicer looking product. We have a product that's easier to use, and those software maintenance agreements will, the TSW is a major investment for an end user. It gives them the peace of mind that their software is not going to go out of date anytime soon. And for technicians, we've made it far easier to program. And if you ever do make a mistake, remember that undo button is finally there. So technicians are going to be happy about that. And again, software maintenance agreements, the technicians benefit from that as well, because they, of course, want to see their customers stay up to date with the software. And the customers benefit all the way around. They have a sharp looking console that makes their fire alarm system, so much easier to use. So excited about these new features and the new features to come in TSW 603 next year. So look for this version of TSW to be released later on this summer. We don't have an exact time frame for it yet, but it's coming very close. We can all continue to hope that UL moves quickly on their approvals. Let's move on to the next slide. So this next section is the really, really exciting subject for this year, and that's the TrueSight Workstation, the BSIU version. So most people at this point have probably not even heard of what a BSIU is yet. Well, BSIU showed up in the 2019 version of the National Fire Alarm Code. And essentially what this is a TSW software package that is actually UL approved to operate on an ordinary PC. And that's the real exciting part. It's, so it can do a lot of things that the TSW can do, but it doesn't require that big, clunky, noisy, and worst of all, expensive PC that's UL 864 listed for the TSW. And believe it or not, you actually can exercise control over the fire alarm system from the BSIU, even though it's not running on listed hardware, or UL 864 listed hardware, I should say. So there are some design requirements that have to be met for a system to qualify to use a BSIU, and we'll go over those in detail. But the very, very exciting thing here is you can have TSW functionality, or at least the majority of the TSW's functionality, for literally a fraction of the cost. So next slide, Peter. Okay, so the BSIU, as we already discussed, does not require the UL 864 listed hardware. It meets all of the new code requirements within NFPA 72. And the really unique opportunity here is that this software can run on a commercially available PC. In fact, what many people will no doubt choose to do is ask the customer to supply the PC. And by doing that, many fire alarm technicians are not also computer experts. So one of the things that some technicians dislike about the TSW was that if something went wrong with the computer, all of a sudden they have to be a computer technician. Well, if the customer is maintaining their own PC, then that's no longer an issue. Let's take a look at the next slide. So let's take a look at what the code really says about the Building Systems Information Unit. Notice that it says in the part of the paragraph that's highlighted here that there are still requirements for the PC. So this may look a little bit intimidating. It says that PC needs to be listed to UL 62368-1 or UL 60950. Well, that may seem like, well, here we're just trading one UL standard for another. And that's true, but what you'll find is that these two UL standards apply to just about every commercially available PC. In fact, the laptop that I'm using right now conforms to one of these two UL standards. So if you were to tell your customer's IT department that these are the requirements for the PC, it's not a big deal. The only requirement that may be a little bit unique is that the PC needs to have an internal speaker. Most PCs do have an internal speaker, but that is a requirement so that the BSIU can make noise. With external speakers, a customer could turn them off, where an internal speaker is not as easy to turn off. Okay, let's take a look at the next slide. All right, let's talk about where a BSIU can be used, because there are a few qualifications that must be met. The BSIU, because it's not running on listed or UL864 listed hardware, cannot be completely relied on for the operation of the system. So the NFPA codes have written in a few safeguards for that. The first requirement is the BSIU needs to be in the same room as the fire alarm control unit, as well as the BSIU can only perform functions that can also be performed on the fire alarm control unit in the same room. So in other words, if that BSIU, because it's a piece of software, were to freeze up or crash, you cannot compromise the life safety of that building. And that makes sense. It's a good compromise. The BSIU still does, though, feature the powerful tools, the reports, the many features that make us fall in love with the TSW. All of those are still there, but the critical functionality needs to be available at the fire alarm control unit as well. So because that's a limitation or a requirement, I should say, obviously this can't be used on very, very large systems. We still need the TSW to handle anything that that can't be handled through either a single node, or if you want to get really creative, you could actually use a BSIU in a fire alarm network, as long as you had a network display unit in that same room. So that could be your fire alarm control unit. So you'll see the code references on the slide. You may want to jot those down and read more about the BSIU in NFPA 72, but we're not going to go through that in detail at this point.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, one thing to break in here, maybe at this point, is about the podcast.
Yeah, good point. If you'd like to introduce that, Peter.
Yeah, I'll talk about the podcast later, but one of the earlier issues that we did was Paul and Roger Reiswig talking about the BSIU, and there's a really good 20-25 minutes with them explaining what the BSIU is, and how the codes work and why the codes are the way they are. It's a really good educational resource for you and your teams, as well as for your customers, because again, like Paul said, this is something that's brand new. And I think, Paul, we are the only, or maybe the first or second manufacturer to actually bring this to market.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because we're, at least at the time when we started the UL approval process, we were one of only 2 manufacturers that had already started the process of getting this BSIU software approved. So in fact, if you do a Google search for BSIU, we dominate the search results. So this is going to be a really, really powerful offering for Autocall. It's going to be something that's at least initially is going to feel like it's an exclusive offering, because other manufacturers, frankly, are playing catch up in this area. So because this is so accessible from a pricing perspective, we expect to see a lot of BSIUs. And it makes the fire alarm system so much easier to operate. The analogy we used in the podcast was the self-checkout at a grocery store. How many of us understand the MRP system of the grocery store that we go to? But when they put that graphical interface in front of us, we all become experts all of a sudden. So we really believe that the BSIU is that sort of product for the fire alarm world. Customers will be far less intimidated by their fire alarm systems if they have simple graphics that they can use to operate them. So thanks for bringing that up, Peter. That was a good side point. Okay, next slide. All right, if you've ever ordered a TSW, it's admittedly kind of complicated to order. But ordering the BSIU software, because it is just software, it's not any hardware options and all sorts of features to navigate through. You only have one part number to remember, and that's listed on the screen there, the A190-8408. So simple to order, and again, very, very cost competitive. And I know we're going to get the question of, what computer should we specify? If you have the option to specify a computer, I would specify the one shown on the screen here, the Dell Optiplex 3070 SFF, and only because that's the PC that we used in our software quality assurance testing. So we know that particular PC performs very well. Okay, next slide. So just to sum up, again, low cost. This is a very value-oriented piece of software and very powerful. When we first set out to develop the BSIU, we were presented with a choice. What features will we make available? We went in it from the mindset that we wanted this to be the most powerful BSIU software that underwriters, laboratories, and NFPA standards would allow. So we didn't take out features for the sake of taking them out. This is a fully featured software suite. So again, we get rid of that clunky UL864 PC, and we present a much, much more attractive pricing point. The market size that you can address with this, we expect these BSIUs to be even on small systems, single node systems, even if it's 100 points, a few hundred points, this still presents value at the point that it's priced at. Again, better safety, the safety of building occupants and the efficiency of operators, even brand new operators, like your typical Securitas type of operator, they'll have a much easier time operating the system. So the reporting features that we love about the TSW, those of course are a feature that end customers will love, and the SMA, or the software maintenance agreement. Look for continued communication about this, because this is a recurring revenue opportunity that you're really going to want to take advantage of with the BSIU. So with that, thank you, Peter. From your note, it looks like I may have been breaking up a little bit there, so hopefully that came through okay. But I'll turn it back to you now, Peter.
Great. No, fantastic. I heard you just fine, Paul. And just the question that I had for you, you mentioned on the 602 version, are we looking at a similar launch time frame for the BSIU?
Yeah, so the 602 and BSIU releases should come at the same time. So later on this summer, I really hesitate to throw out an estimated date, just because.
No, that's fine.
Just
They'll
because
come out
it's
at the same time
at this point, but they should be released simultaneously. Yes.
Okay, and one thing, I didn't want to break your flow, but one thing I noticed on the slides, we talked about Spanish and Portuguese and Arabic, but we should have also mentioned Canadian French, right? The Canadian French is going to be ready at time of launch.
Yes, yeah, I should have added that in as well. But that's what we get for reusing slides that we used in Latin America.
Yeah. So so you can do Portuguese and Arabic if you want to, but there you go. Okay. No, really good, really exciting product. And I just wanted to put a point on it, because working on some of the launches for this, for things like a school, like a primary school, or maybe a single school building where you couldn't, afford the tens of thousands of dollars for TSW. I think this is just a fantastic solution for a school or a smaller hospital, or, one of these customers that just doesn't have the budget for a full-blown system. I think this is a great solution. Because when we originally started talking about this with Roger and you, I was like, Well, if I have it in the room with my control unit, what good is it? Like, I've got the control unit sitting right there. Why do I need the BSIU? And then as we really looked at it and he explained it, I was like, I get it. This is awesome.
Yeah, it really is. And I see that we've got a couple of questions up here. That the one that's real easy to answer is what is the network interface between the BSIU and fire alarm? So this will be available for ESNet only. So if you have a single node system, you just basically add an ES card into there, and that'll connect directly up to the Ethernet port in that PC. So good question. I should have mentioned that.
Okay, great. So with that, we're going to pass now to the next piece, which is an update from Chuck on some of our design tools. Chuck, you're broadcasting. We see it. It's up. Take it away.
Perfect. Hey everybody, Chuck Claudel, Sales Applications Manager for JCI. What that means is I pretty much support Selection Navigator and all the design tools. I've probably spoken to many of you. So a little background. We released the IDNAC point-to-point designer as a replacement for TrueNAC last June of 2020. And since then it's changed and gotten better. But one of the things that we kept hearing back from everybody, feedback was, we love Selection Navigator for building our 4100s. It's much easier than the Smart Panel was, but we still don't like, when we're doing estimates, how long it takes to put field devices in, because you either would have to add them via the add products and go to each of the individual selectors and hit the filters and say, I want a smoke detector with a standard base. And when you get that done, it says, now what do you want to add? And you go right back and start the process over again. If you're putting them in as systems, that also takes some time because you have to do the individuals. So some of our dealers were using kind of homemade spreadsheets to gather those items and then trying to import them in. So we answered your request and we came out in February of this year with the FQQ. So it's been out for a few months. We've made some more improvements. So we have this is the home page for it's the IDNAC. NAC designers in there now in FQQ. So you got 3 different tools in one. So the FQQ, it's a spreadsheet that you have installed on your local machine, and you would go through the tabs and add the individual devices as you're doing your takeoff. So it provides a rapid fluid interface for selecting products. It follows the logical selection process that you use when you're doing a takeoff. And finally, it generates a file which you can bring into Selection Navigator in one shot rather than doing 50 different types of individual devices. You bring them all in at once. While it's doing so, though, it's providing useful calculations on the estimated number of loops that you'll need, how many addressable ID NACs you'll need, repeater counts, if you're using conventional NACs, what those circuits look like, and then speaker wattage, so you know what kind of amps you need, and then cable calculations. You, the user, can set up the base preferences such as wire gauge and spare design capacity per section. So if your specification says, I need 20% headroom, you just set that up before you start the job. And then when you get to 200 points on an IDNet loop, it'll say, oops, you need another IDNet loop. There are 4 easy to navigate sections. You got the FQQ, the import drawing file, the labor rates, and then the BOM. So in the FQQ portion, there's a custom ribbon at the top, allows you to for rapid navigation, and it's set up with IDNet, IDNAC, conventional NACs. You have third-party items, and third-party items might be your electrical subcontractor costs, or you could put wire in there. You could put permitting costs, and these are all items that you can select and set up in your template so that it fits your business model. Each sheet, there's a dedicated sheet for each category, and there's at the top of each sheet, it has specific calculations and info per that sheet. So again, if I hit the 501st IDNet device, it's going to tell me I need 3 IDNet channels because they're 250, 250, and then we're into the third card. So again, we came out in February, so recent enhancements. We listened to what you guys said and said, well, I want to be able to navigate around in those sheets a little bit better. So we've added things like the jump to navigation for device type and for columns. So if I'm in the IDNet page and I can scroll down the page and find my detectors are first, and then my duct detectors are next, then beams, then IM modules, I can skip straight to the IM modules by hitting jump to, and this window will open up. I can go straight to IMs. Similarly, we have 100 columns that run out to the right, and that's so if you have a 100-story building that you want to do an estimate on, 100 different pages, you can assign a column to each one of those takeoffs. So you might have first floor, second floor, third, or you might have electrical drawing E101, E102, E103. You can jump straight to those columns without scrolling across. A lot of times on those particular scenarios, choose a 10-story building, a little more believable, you might have second through 8th floor are all the same, identical layouts. So once you've done the work on the second floor column, you can grab the copy and paste. You hit the button and say, well, copy everything I have in this column to the next available, or I can say copy to from 2 up to number 7 or number 8. You also have the ability, if you mess up and need to start all over, just clear the whole column. Anytime you do that, it's going to ask that you'll get a pop-up window that says, are you really sure that you want to clear? Because there is no undo button. Okay. Finally, we found that, if I'm doing that 10-story building, I might have a panel plus a couple of transponders. The first floor the panel takes care of first, second, and third floor. Transponder 1 might be 4, 5, and 6. When we used to do the takeoffs, it would individually total. Column 1 was just, it would say, however, I might have 50 devices on it. It would say you need an IDNet channel. Column 2, the second floor, had 50 devices. You need another IDNet channel. So we've started grouping them together, and you can put first, second floor, third floor, all part of one group. And when it does its calculations, it looks at it and says you have 50 devices, 50 and 50. I can fit 150 devices on one IDNet channel. So it automatically spits that data out for you and gives you a calculated version. You also still have the sum calculation where it says, all right, you 3 columns, 3 loop cards, we're telling you need 3. We also give you the ability to do labor. So you guys, everybody has their own different tools for using labor. You're using our tool to calculate individual devices. Why not take those totals and cut out the middleman? So you can, everything in light blue on anywhere in our sheet is all user changeable. You can go in and set for a detector. We have a default of it takes 10 minutes to install a detector. You might say, well, we figure 30 minutes to install a detector. You can define the hours and minutes for each project category per work type, and we have an installation column, a commissioning column, and a service column. You can adjust your hours. You can manually add hours. If you're doing a prevailing wage job, maybe Davis-Bacon job, you can put in extra hours for that, or you can just change the percentage of allowance. So when we're doing this labor feed, remember I told you this tool has a bunch of different facets. It has the ID NAC point-to-point, the NAC point-to-point, the FQQ, and then file import, which we're going to talk about in a minute. You can choose any or all of those functions in a filter that's at the top of the page and say, I want these items included in my totals over here. That can be one or all of them. And then you also have the hours, rates, and allowances. This can be configured by work type. You can set them up for, is it a weekday work or weekend work? You can round the days to full or half days. You can select a percentage labor mix for each of your work types. And then finally, travel and allowance costs can be included in here as well. So if you're working out of town, make sure you include those costs. So now let's move on to the file drawing import. What we did previously, I'll back up a couple pages here. What we did before was we went to the IDNet page. We ran down the list of items, said I need 5 of these, 10 of these, 12 of these items. And then I moved over to the next column, ID NAC. Well, there are programs out there, Bluebeam, for example, is one of them, that you would use an aftermarket tool to go through and you would spot and dot. Like the old days, we used to use highlighters and we'd have a set of drawings in on our table. Well, now we've going on to doing this online on computers. Well, this Bluebeam program, for example, it automatically totals those for you, and it will spit out a file that has those totals. If you do that, you can automatically bring that in one shot into our program as the file import. So when you open up this section, you'll have this ribbon at the top. We can edit the drawing import sheet, meaning I can set up whether I want to use which libraries and such, and I'll talk about that. You actually, when you click the import, it'll say, well, what file do you want to bring in from Bluebeam? And then I can hide or show the info panel, which just like all the other pages, it tells you based on what you've told me, you're going to need 3 loop cards and you're going to need 4 ID NAC channels, all those things. So in the ribbon, I mean, in the import library, I can tell it, do I want to use the master library, which we have designed already? And you can see down here, this is the master library, smoke detector standard base. That phrase is mapped to, anytime that this program sees that phrase coming from Bluebeam, it automatically knows that you need a 9714 smoke and a 9792 base. You can use our library if you're going to start with Bluebeam as a new program. You can take our library and paste it in there. But if you already have a Bluebeam library that you're working on, you can scroll over and say, I'm going to use a custom library and insert your custom library in and just make sure that they're mapped to the proper devices. But it's super quick. If I did it right now and I went and brought a file, and it takes seconds for it to upload, and then you flip around and create a bill of materials. So that's the next page. Our BOM, we can grab the same filter at the top that we showed for labor. I can create a bill of materials from the ID NAC designer, the quick quote, where I did it kind of the more labor intensive way, or from a file import. And the end game for all of this is this blue button over here. Let's create a Navigator CSV file. So you create that file. This is where you want to save it, throw it in a job folder. When you get over to Selection Navigator, you built your 4100. That took a few minutes, and then you say import a file in the add products. You bring in that Bluebeam CSV, and bam, it's all there, and all the prices are associated with it. You can also edit the quantities on the devices. So if you brought all those in and you go back and they had a change order and you needed to add 5 more smoke detectors, you don't have to go all the way through and bring it into quick quote again and then re-import it and all those things. We've unlocked those items at the Selection Navigator point. So now moving back to the ID NAC point-to-point, the original tool, we've made some improvements on it as well. So we've added this ribbon at the top, and we've customized the tray at the bottom with some color coding so it's easier to see. One thing we've done for everything is, one of the complaints we had was when I'm way over in this right-hand column, I'm looking at the tap features, it's hard to tell if I'm in the right row. So if I'm down here near the bottom, I'm looking here, which line am I working on? So anytime you click anywhere on any of our sheets, it highlights the entire row in black so you can make sure that you're making changes to the proper line. And then we told you we were replacing true NAC. Well, the conventional NAC devices were still kind of hanging out there with no support for them. So we have just gone through and we've added the new tool where you can use the P2P designer for the JCI devices, our Eaton max value wheel-lock devices, and then you can also use your own custom devices if you put them in. It's a pretty basic calculator, and you can set the default wire gauge and wire length for each device. One of the cool things we have on this, though, if you're running along and you've got everything at 14 gauge and it's looking really good, and you think, well, I wonder if I could do this job in 16 gauge wire or not, you can go back, change the default, and you push the default wire length and everything will change, and it'll pop up and say, yep, you're still within tolerances. You haven't dipped below the 16 volt mark and you're in good shape. So these are some of the little tricks that we've added to it. So where do I find the program? We have made the tool available, of course, to our dealers, but we've also given it to architects and engineers. So you don't have to log in. You can go straight to the Design Center. Go straight to the Design Center A&E page. They'll find the notification appliance circuit. And if you go into the dealer section, sales resources, you get this link, but both of them take you to a page that looks like this. And there's the place to download the tool. The other thing is download the latest announcements, release notes. And then we've also taken the videos. I created some videos on how to work it, and we were having trouble. Everybody was trying to log in. If they didn't have access to ULearn, they couldn't find it. So they are now on, that we put them on YouTube, so anybody can access the videos. Engineers, one of the biggest complaints with previous JCI products was we can't use our own tools. We have to talk to the guy behind the curtain in order to get these fixed. So we've decided, let's go ahead and give them to engineers. Let's make ID NAC really easy to design, and they'll want to use it and it'll get specified. So for me, Peter, that's it. Whoop, no, it isn't. I forgot. I added another file. If you need some help, the very home page has the help tab, and then this window will pop up. Do us a favor. Aside from asking questions, if you want some new features, if you see something to make it better, by all means, contact myself or Jason Crouch. via email or call us and we'll talk about it. And all these new improvements came from people saying, I wanted to do this as well.
Fantastic, Chuck. Thank you so much for the overview. So I'm going to go ahead and take over control with the slide again. All right, so you see it now, correct? We're good?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you, Chuck. And a lot of great additions to that. That's becoming a super powerful tool, and I think a real time saver, which is fantastic. So now we're going to pass over to Lori Comer to talk about the new Fire Talk program. Lori?
Thanks, Peter.
We got you.
All right, I'm still here. All right, you can go to the next slide, Peter. All right, so we have a new program called Fire Talk. Essentially, this is a weekly chat series that we've launched with the field sales engineering team as a way to reach out to you as our customers and have a chat. We talk about all different kinds of things fire detection related, and the topics do change every week. So basically, it's kind of like FSC office hours. You can jump on the call and listen to the conversation. We do topic-based conversation for the first 30 minutes of the call. And then the second 30 minutes, we do open forum. You can ask any question you want about any kind of situation you're having right now with Autocall products or whatever it is, your applications, you're having any issues. You can kind of come on there and ask anything you like. We also love to receive feedback. You know, if you want to hear about a specific topic, we'd love to hear from you on the call. Let us know, and then we'll be able to roll it into the next call coming up. But these are weekly. They alternate Tuesdays and Thursdays. Hopefully you've received an invite from your area sales manager, but if you have not, you can reach out to them and ask for them to send you the meeting invites. We have special guests on the call from time to time as well. Sometimes we have folks from apps engineering, or we'll have tech support on to talk to certain products or features. So it's an awesome call. We love having everyone on the call and having the informal chat. It's not meant to be, a required call. Obviously, we want it to be totally optional. You jump on if you like the topic. And if you don't like the topic, you can feel free to jump off and maybe join the next call. We don't post the topics anywhere, but we do announce the topics at the top of every call. So you can jump on for 5 minutes, find out what the topic is. If you like it, you can stay. If you don't, we'll see you on the next call. So that's pretty much how it works. And it's just, like I said, another way for us to reach out to you as Autocall dealers to find out what's going on with you and listen to any issues you may have or any feedback you may have, and then also go over any pertinent information. We do try to keep them to current event topics. So the stuff that you're going to hear, is stuff like we've talked about on this call, the BSIU, the new TSW, the new touchscreen display, all those things I've talked about as well. We can get into more detail, of course, with the whole field sales engineering team being on the call. So that's nice. We have a whole team that has, possibly over 100 years of experience, just waiting to answer your questions and talk to you about these topics. So it's really exciting. We love doing it. And Peter, I love the picture that you have on here with the coffee talk. That's hilarious. But that's pretty much the vibe we want. We want it to be fun. We don't want it to be boring or to be just another mandatory JCI call, right? We want it to be optional and more light and fun. And it is. It's really awesome. So I do encourage everyone to jump on. And as I said, if you don't have the invites for that, please reach out to your ASMs and they can hook you up. But thanks again. That's all I had to say. But appreciate you putting us in here.